Welcome to The Deal, a podcast dedicated to maximizing name, image, and likeness opportunities. You'll hear from student athletes, coaches, and athletic administrators on how NIL partnerships can impact individuals and the schools they attend. It all comes down to making the best deal.
Welcome back to an episode of The Deal. Today we are here with Opendorse with Katie. And we're just going to go over some basic information on what Opendorse is and how it can help any student athlete looking for NIL opportunities. So, Katie, can you just give us a high-level overview of what the basics of Opendorse is, like what its role is in a student athlete's NIL process?
Yeah, for sure. So Opendorse has existed for over 10 years now. And so obviously NIL has not been around in the law of the land that long. But before we were working with college athletes, we were working with pro athletes, essentially doing the same thing. So endorsement deals, helping pro athletes make money in a way that was really easy and streamlined. So that was how Opendorse started. And then obviously, the growth of the company has been tenfold since the passing of NIL legislation. So the NAIA was actually the first organization. So before the NCAA, about 9 months before actually, the NAIA made it possible for student athletes to monetize off their name, image, and likeness. So Opendorse hopped right into the game and started working with the NAIA league as a whole just to provide education for student athletes. That's a big piece too. So not only are there opportunities for student athletes to make money, but there are educational opportunities for schools as a whole to partner, get some of this information and this education too. But for student athletes, it's the same thing that we've been doing for more than 10 years now. It's to enable them to make money in a way that is really easy, that's really streamlined, and that most importantly is just safe and compliant for them. So when our developers were really thinking about how to connect with college athletes, you all are always on your phone. I am always on my phone.
Yes.
And so everything has been optimized for use on your phone. So Opendorse has an app, and that is where everything goes through. So deals, whether they come through the Opendorse app or, businesses or people are directed there through your profile, all of that exists right on the Opendorse app.
Okay. So if I am a student athlete and I'm looking to get help through Opendorse and I know what NIL is, but I just don't really know how to get started with the app on Opendorse or whatever, how would you suggest I get started with Opendorse? And can you give us more of like an overview of what that looks like for the student athlete?
For sure. So it is truly as simple as just like setting up a social media profile, right? It's going to walk you through a pretty similar process. So when you download the app, you're going to be asked some questions like, what sport do you play? What school do you go to? Things like that. So that identifying information helps us, tease out, like to associate you with the NAIA, associate you with your school as well, even your sport. And then from there, directly on the Opendorse app, we have our opportunity board. So we have seen NAIA student athletes make over $133,000. So since the start of NIL, that's what, $60,000 or $70,000 a year on average that student athletes are making. And the majority of that money has come through the opportunity board. So these are companies that are coming to us and they are asking for, they want to work with student athletes. They are not sure what level, what sport. And so we have lots of NAIA student athletes that have gotten opportunities through the Opendorse opportunity board. So the piece that's really important too is that when you're starting out, when you're getting your profile set up, to fill out the more information, the better. So Opendorse has a process that you go through when you sign up that takes you through different levels. So when you're first signing up, you're a rookie. As you add more information, you become a starter and a playmaker. And then the top level is to be an all-star. So through the app, as you're signing up, it's walking you through what information needs to be part of your profile to get to an all-star level. So somewhere like in the 40% range, like 40% of opportunities given to student athletes go to ones with all-star profiles. So that means that you have a way greater opportunity of getting selected for some of these deals if you filled out your profile information. If you've added information like your hometown, your interests. And again, all of these things are directly through the Opendorse app, and the sign up flow really helps you kind of get started, lets you know what information is needed. The great piece too is you can also connect your social media, and that will pull through your follower counts. So whether that's TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, all of those things, you'll be able to connect those so that brands that are looking to work with you will know how many followers you have on different social media platforms.
Okay, so it just seems like it's a big hub for everything in all communication with NIL for the student athlete.
Yeah. And earlier I mentioned just the safety and compliance, right? So the biggest thing for student athletes is we want to make sure that, number one, you're safe, and most importantly, you're safe, but then also just really embracing and understanding that you also need to get paid for what you're doing, right? I tell the story often. I have worked with student athletes before I started at Opendorse, and they have done deals in their Instagram direct messages and their TikTok DMs, and they have not gotten paid, right? And so going through Opendorse ensures that the student athlete will get paid, that it's safe. They don't have to give out their personal cell phone number. All the communication goes through the app.
Right. So I know you said that you've worked with student athletes, and I'm sure you know many stories of student athletes from the NIA that has gone through Opendorse and has received so much help. How have you seen the success with the growth of NIL, especially within the NIAA?
Yeah. So I think, as we get further and further along, as NIL has been passed and as people are understanding it more and starting to take advantage of it more, we have really seen the growth. I want to talk specifically about like student athlete directed deals. So when I'm talking about that, I'm talking about even outside of the opportunity board, right? So the opportunity board is always going to exist. Like there are always going to be businesses that want to work with student athletes on a large scale, like specific sports on a really large scale. So they might be working with volleyball athletes at NCAA Division I, at junior colleges, at NAIA schools. And so, those businesses and opportunities will continue to exist. But I think what we've really seen an uptick in this last year, and kind of the way that the industry is changing, we are seeing specific alumni, supporters, people that have a vested interest in the school that a student athlete is going to, or who own a business in the city that the school is in. We have seen far greater interest in that too. So I think that as student athletes are starting to think about like, what does it look like for me to start doing NIL deals? A piece of that too is really to, embrace the community that you're in. So whether that's hosting a camp, like going in and talking to local businesses. We have like women's basketball players who have gone to a local pizza place and they have gotten NIL deals, from their local pizza place in a small town.
Right.
And, the same things continue to happen across the country, that, student athletes are being proactive. They're having conversations with business owners, they're having conversations with supporters, and, those are leading to deals, like significant deals. And so I think that piece too is, I think that we don't hear about that maybe as much in the NAIA space, of student athletes really embracing, their local community, getting opportunities from their local community. But, outside of just the Opendorse Opportunity Board, which will, continue to provide opportunities for student athletes, there is an even greater level of investment from alumni, supporters, local communities, all those things.
Yeah, that's great. And that's a good point to touch on, just because in our previous episode, we discussed with student athlete that she feels like not as many NAIA specifically student athletes know exactly what they can do for NIL. So I know with you guys, you've been a part of this whole journey from the very beginning, essentially. How have you seen the variety become even more vast of different kinds of deals? And especially like you said, like with the small towns, especially NAIA schools, they're in those small towns, they work with the community. How have you seen different kinds of deals expand? If that makes any sense.
I think, the biggest barrier to really get over in the first year of NIL, it just didn't exist to the same level that like fans and just the normal people knew what they could now do. So I have heard an AD say a lot of times, like, we have been told for so long that red means stop and now red means go, right? And so it's like with everything changing with college athletics, when we're talking specifically about name, image, and likeness legislation, supporters, fans, business owners, like they have been told for so long they can't pay student athletes. Mm-hmm. And now the big hurdle that we have to overcome is educating them, right? And whether a student athlete is doing promo on their social media for a business, whether they are, like directing people to a website, directing people to go in person, and they're earning commission off that, like all of those things allow, and I would say most of the things that are happening in the NAIA space are student athlete led, right? I know that instance I talked about with the women's basketball players in the pizza place, like that would not have happened if they hadn't been proactive to go in, right. And I would say that is where lots of these deals are coming from. There's another example of a men's basketball player who reached out to his barbershop that he was going into regularly. And he's like, hey, if I post about this on my social media, can I get a free like haircut, or can I get a gift card, or whatever it is? And so some of those things too, student athletes are being proactive. And whether it's reaching out in person, sending an email, even reaching out on social media. One of the things that we're talking to student athletes about across the country is, don't be afraid to send a DM to a company that you want to work with. Like if you are drinking liquid IV every day off of, after practice, or, if there is a certain product you use in recovery regularly, reach out to that company. There's a great example that, I've heard of a baseball player doing just that, like the equipment that he used, the things he used in game for recovery, all of those things, he was reaching out to companies and was like, hey, if I post about this on my social media, will you send me free gear? And like that was happening too, so right. Whether it's in the local community, reaching out via social media, there are just like a myriad of opportunities that are available if you just ask, right?
Right. So kind of switching gears here. I know as the NAIA, we are very lucky to have you guys as our partner. And so we get the opportunity to look at other schools that we know, such as like Langston or other schools that are more up and coming with the NIL world. How has it been having schools have their own landing page essentially on Opendorse?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So the biggest, this answers a couple questions, actually. This answers first for any of the people who I've talked about who are supporters. So whether it's alumni of the university, local donors, whatever it is, it answers the question for them first, like, what are they doing about NIL, right? So it's showing that they are getting engaged in the NIL game. They're starting to provide resources for their student athletes. But then the second piece to that also is it's answering the question, where do I start if I want to work with student athletes, right? Coaches, administrators, they do not have the time nor like the desire, I will say overall, to like, they don't want to be like brokering deals. They don't want to be in the middle of that. And so what it allows them to do by having these marketplaces for their student athletes, what it allows them to do is, hey, if they have someone reach out to them who wants to work with their softball team, they're able to send them directly to their marketplace, and you can look specifically for softball student athletes, reach out to them. And our big thing is we wanted to take anyone who came to the marketplace from pitch to payment in 60 seconds. So we want them to be able to put in, what are they asking of the student athlete? Is it a post on social media? Do they want an autograph? Do they want a meet and greet? Do they want, are they looking for like golf lessons for, one of their kids, or, soccer lessons or things like that? And they want to be able to have the supporter, have the fan, have the individual reach out via the marketplace, and then, immediately be able to put in their payment information. And then, from there, the student athlete will get the deal, complete the deal, and then get paid. So it's a really, again, I know you have heard me say, but like, it's a really streamlined process. So in a way that's safe and compliant for the student athletes, for the institution, the university, and it makes it really easy for those fans and supporters too.
Yeah. I know you mentioned the role of like the admin and athletic directors and coaches. How have you seen their interaction with Opendorse, or what do you guys view as their role within NIL? I know you briefly touched on it, but.
Yeah, I think that the student athletes that are seeing the most success, and I can say this from, what I have seen, the student athletes that are seeing the most success have administrators, have coaches that are bought in to providing them NIL resources. So whether that's like the marketplace, like we talked about, an even bigger piece to that is education, right? So you're hearing me talk about like ways that student athletes can get deals, can interact with businesses. Our education piece goes into a much deeper dive on like, what does that actually look like? And so for administrators to really buy into that, to bring our education team to campus, that enables student athletes to, I think I pulled some information recently that one of our schools that had an on-site education, they account for like 10%, maybe more than that, 15% of total earnings. So when we're looking at like across the NAIA, all the schools that exist, for one school to have such a large piece of the earnings just with the, like with their student athlete population, that shows that there's a direct correlation between educating your student athletes, putting these resources in place, and then student athletes making more money. And so, that is the piece too, is to have coaches, to have administrators that are bought in. And we work with, I think we are now up to like 17 different conferences are represented in our partners. So that there's only 21 NAIA
Right.
conferences. And so we have at least one school in 17 different conferences right now. And so for us to be able to, work with student athletes across the country in every conference, we're really able to point back to not only a return on their investment from the money that their student athletes are making, but just from like the level of education that they're getting as well.
Right. And I know you guys have that legislative aspect with any information that you guys can give a student athlete or a coach, but where exactly can people find that on Opendorse?
Like the policy and the
what do you guys provide in terms of learning about what I guess you can and can't do, and just that part of NIL?
Yeah. So I would say that for the schools that we work with specifically, we aid and help to not only set up, but then also implement NIL policy. So for schools that are not partnered with Opendorse, there's lots of information online. The NAIA has an NIL policy. All that can be found online. In addition, it's important to know the different state by state law. So wherever your school is, all truly just a Google of like Oklahoma NIL, state law will bring up information about that. So it is all accessible information. And, for student athletes in general, like the NAIA legislation and rules, as long as they are like abiding by those guidelines, it is going to fall in line with the state by state ones as well.
Right. As we just wrap up here, I know we kind of discussed a lot of different tips and tricks and whatever, on how to navigate NIL, but if you were to have just a few best practices for coaches and admin and student athletes, what would you say those are?
Yeah. So I think I'm going to start first with student athletes. So I think it's really important to put your Opendorse profile link in your social media bio. So that's something that when you create your Opendorse profile, you will have a specific link. So it'll be opendorse.com/profile/Katie Wilkins. And so you will have your own link that you can direct people to. That's helpful if you have businesses, people reaching out that want to work with you. You can send that, be like, hey, can you go through my Opendorse profile? That makes sure that like you're getting paid. Like we guarantee that end to end, that if you do what's being asked of you, that you're going to get the money for it. That's a way that is really safe, and it's really easy for student athletes. And it's a pretty low lift just to put that in your bio. The second piece kind of goes hand in hand with that. So it's also like making sure that you let it be known on your social media. So whether that's like doing a short TikTok where you have like screenshots, right? And you're showing your Opendorse profile or whatever it is, or if you're doing a tweet or posting on threads about it, or, making an Instagram story, but making sure that people know, even if they don't want to work with you, like maybe right then, but there may come a time when people go back to that and they're like, oh, I think maybe they're on Opendorse. Let me go check their profile. So being able to let people know, let the people who follow you know, that you are open to doing NIL deals, and that they can do it all through Opendorse. So I would say that those are two big pieces. And I think, another piece to kind of go hand in hand with that is to just make sure that like you are not putting yourself in a precarious situation. And so I think the biggest thing is being able to, really understand kind of what brands are expecting, what businesses are expecting from you, so that you can make sure to do that, complete that deal in a way that is not going to get anyone in trouble. So
Right.
I think, for athletic directors, coaches, the biggest thing you can do is just make sure that you know and understand NIL policy. So, I mean, that's just understanding what the NAIAs is for your institution, whatever state your institution is in, understanding that too. Because if coaches and administrators do not know those things, there is no hope for their
Right.
students. I mean, it becomes much more difficult. Student athletes are much less likely to seek this out on their own. And so really being able to, dig in, understand, make sure that your institution has some semblance of an NIL policy, so that if questions ever come up, you can point back to that. The other piece too is just making sure that you're having these conversations. I think every athletic department across the country is having these beginning of the year meetings. They're talking about compliance. They're talking about, hey, how do you make sure that you are remaining eligible? How are you making sure you're taking care of your business in the classroom? And I mean, the world that we live in now, another piece that has to be added to that is just the NIL piece. So if NIL deals do come up, pointing your student athletes to, here's our policy, here are the things that are allowed and not allowed, and just making sure that they know that.
Yeah, and those are great aspects. And I know that even student athletes who are very aware of exactly what they should be doing and have communicated with us, they say very similar things. So it's good to hear, even from the Opendorse perspective, that is so important.
If I told you that in 5 minutes, you could make updates to your profile that improve your chances at getting an NIL deal. Would you do it? Open the mobile app and tap Improve Profile Strength. Complete all the sections in the guide, and you'll be an all-star. We'll give you a profile badge to prove it. Best of all, you'll now be a top result in fan and brand searches, all in less than 5 minutes.
All right. Bye, y'all. Great
Thank
to
you,
see
Katie.